After uncovering a deeply unsettling truth about our family's hidden secrets, I was suddenly burdened with the unexpected duty of supporting my sister and her 6 children. This shocking revelation not only altered the dynamics between us all but also led my grandparents to reconsider their long-held intentions and completely change their will. The ripple effect of this discovery has forced us to confront painful realities and unearth family truths that no one was ever prepared to face. As far back as I can remember, I always knew I was never my parents' favorite. Although my little sister Emma was always center stage, receiving endless encouragement no matter how many mistakes she made, I became determined to rely on myself. I poured my efforts into school, worked through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, and ultimately secured a stable, well-paying career despite receiving almost no support at home. Yet, even with these accomplishments, my parents never seemed truly impressed, and I learned to dismiss their lack of praise, hoping that one day they'd appreciate my independence. Meanwhile, Emma faced a series of unending struggles. She married young, only for her first union to collapse within 2 years because of infidelity, then remarried quickly and had 2 more children, only for that relationship to crumble when her husband's gambling addiction cost them their home. While I was busy establishing my career, Emma entered her 3rd marriage, now with 6 children ranging from age 12 down to 2, and her current husband, who works part-time deliveries and tries to launch his own business, could only make ends meet barely. Unfailingly, my parents cleaned up Emma's messes by covering expenses and inventing reasons for extra help, even as I focused solely on my own life, until I noticed a change in their behavior toward me. Suddenly, they became far more attentive, making more calls, praising my work, and inviting me to family dinners more often. At first, I believed they had finally recognized my efforts, a validation I had longed for, and I wanted to trust that they were truly changing. Last month, they invited me over for dinner, and initially, our conversation felt normal. We discussed my job, caught up on family news, and for a moment I felt like I truly belonged. Then, the tone shifted unexpectedly. They started discussing Emma, highlighting how difficult it was for her to raise 6 kids on a single income and claiming they had done everything possible to help her, although their resources were nearly exhausted. They emphasized how fortunate I was to have a secure job and financial stability, pointing out that I was independent and in a position to support the family. Then came the real shock. They wanted me to assume full financial responsibility for Emma and her family. They laid out a detailed plan, requesting that I buy Emma a new 5-bedroom home, since her current apartment was too cramped for 8, set up college funds for each of her 6 kids on the premise of fairness, and provide her with a $5,000 monthly allowance for essentials and the startup costs of a mommy block. In total, they expected a commitment of about $2 million up front, along with ongoing financial backing. I was utterly speechless. They weren't merely asking for a favor, they were demanding that I become Emma's lifetime financial lifeline. It suddenly dawned on me that their recent warmth was not rooted in genuine pride but rather in seeing me as a cash source for Emma. I explained that while I wouldn't lend occasional help for minor expenses or emergencies, I could not bear such a monumental financial burden. That's when the dinner became catastrophic. My mother began to cry, accusing me of abandoning the family in their time of need, while my father labeled me selfish and ungrateful, claiming I was showing my true colors and letting them down. The evening concluded with them storming out, and I thought that would end it. But I was wrong. Within hours, Emma bombarded my phone with accusatory texts claiming I was ruining her children's futures, even having her kids message me with heartbreaking words like "Uncle doesn't love us anymore." Feeling overwhelmed, I ended up blocking their numbers, still stunned at how quickly things escalated simply because I refused to fund my sister's way of life. The next day, I received an unexpected call from my paternal grandmother. Apparently, my parents had told the extended family that their successful son would cover all family expenses, before even discussing it with me. They had spun an entire story about Emma moving into a big new house, resolving all her financial woes, and how I was supposed to provide everything she needed. Now that I'd declined, they faced major family embarrassment, with everyone expecting me to honor premature promises made by my parents. My grandparents were stunned upon hearing the full story. They had always thought that Emma's lifestyle was funded by her own marriages and that my parents' help was a voluntary gesture, not a debt-burdening pact. Deeply disappointed by my parents' actions, my grandparents threatened to cut them out of their will, vowing instead to leave their inheritance to me and my cousins who actually respected each other and never exploited family bonds. As the situation unraveled, I began to hear from relatives offering support. Some admitted they had no idea about my own struggles and apologized for not noticing sooner, while my aunt regretted not recognizing how differently I had been treated growing up. Family ties were breaking apart with everyone taking sides, and my parents' handling of the situation only made things worse. My phone continuously bombarded me with mixed texts, switching between raging criticism and tearful pleas to reconsider, reminding me that family helps each other out. I found myself torn between guilt, rooted in a childhood belief that family always comes first, and exhaustion over constantly trying to earn approval from people who only appeared when they could benefit. I knew that giving in would just set me up for years of financial and emotional drain, putting Emma's needs above my own well-being. Now, I'm here seeking advice on Reddit, unsure whether to stand firm on my boundaries because it's the healthiest choice for me, or if there's a middle ground I've overlooked. I desperately need guidance on how to navigate this entire mess. Update 1. The situation with my parents and sister has become far more complicated than I ever imagined. A few days after informing my grandparents, they kept their word and contacted their lawyer immediately to remove my parents from the inheritance. My grandparents, who had always avoided conflict, were clearly shocked by the events, marking an unprecedented turn in our family's history. It seems that years of enabling Emma, combined with this recent crisis, were the final straw. Taking matters further, my grandparents arranged a family meeting via video call, ensuring everyone could participate, including me, despite the distance. They wanted every relative to understand exactly what had been happening, and I suspected they had information even I didn't know. The meeting brought together aunts, uncles, cousins, and all other affected relatives. Once the meeting began, my grandparents got straight to the point. For several years, they had given my parents large sums of money to support both Emma's and my educational and future plans. In total, they had transferred more than $200,000, money that was meant to be equally split between Emma and me. I was left reeling, realizing that throughout college, while I juggled scholarships, student loans, and multiple part-time jobs, Emma had seemed to glide through life, constantly being rescued from poor decisions. All this time, I had been struggling alone, unaware that my grandparents' money was secretly poured into Emma's lifestyle, money I never even touched. My grandparents were furious. They had believed the funds were meant to support both of us equally, only to discover how my parents had misused them. They felt completely betrayed. They made it clear to my parents that they wanted to support both sides, but it turned out that most of the money went to Emma to cover her failed marriages, rent, and who knows what else. They demanded a detailed breakdown from my parents, insisting on an accounting for every dollar spent and even threatening to bring in lawyers if they didn't cooperate. For a family as private as ours, this was unthinkable, yet it was obvious that they had reached their breaking point. On top of this, my grandparents announced they were setting up trust funds for each grandchild, including him and 6 others, but made it absolutely clear that an independent professional would manage the money and it could only be spent on predetermined items like education or medical bills. It was evident that they didn't want my parents or Emma to have direct access to these funds, which gave me immense relief knowing that at least the kids would have a more secure future, free from my parents misusing the money for other matters. After the family meeting, everything exploded. Relatives began contacting me one after another as they pieced together the story. Apparently, it wasn't the first time my parents had asked family members for money under the pretense of helping the kids or covering emergencies. One aunt confided that she had lent my parents several $1,000s when Emma's second marriage crumbled, believing it was for essential needs. Meanwhile, a cousin pointed out that my parents had even asked for money when I started college, promising it would help me get on my feet, though I never saw a dime. Some family members were angry, feeling deceived over where their money had gone, while others were simply sad that they hadn't realized how heavily my parents favored Emma over me. One cousin even shared screenshots of conversations from when I graduated college, where my parents discouraged family attendance because I wanted something low-key, even though I had been hoping for a celebration with my loved ones. It felt like a punch to the gut that they actively downplayed my achievements while continuously going above and beyond for Emma. What shocked me most was that Emma herself began reaching out. She sent several lengthy emails, each with a distinct tone. In one email, she feigned longtime support for me, claiming she'd never noticed our parents' favoritism and that she had always believed we were close. In another, she portrayed herself as a victim manipulated by our parents, as if they had blinded her to our family's true dynamics. Yet, in every message, she sneakily included a request for help, as though we had suddenly become best friends. It was clear that she still expected me to fund her life, and it hurt to see her repeat the same manipulative behavior. I refused to fall back into the role of her endless support, determined not to let her drag me back into that cycle even if it meant standing against family expectations. Meanwhile, my parents were busy running their own campaign, bombarding me with a mixture of angry voicemails and tearful pleas. In one message, my mother accused me of tearing the family apart, warning that I would someday regret how much I had hurt everyone. In another, my father begged me to reconsider, suggesting that we could work things out privately without causing a major rift. They even tried to guilt-trip me by saying I was putting my grandparents in an awkward position and urging me to think about how they would feel if the family were divided. Yet, their tactics weren't working. My grandparents had my back, and more family members began to see my parents for who they truly were. Some even called to say they were proud of me for standing my ground, while an aunt tearfully apologized for not noticing how differently I had been treated over the years. She admitted that she had always thought I was independent and needed less support, but now she recognized that I had been forced into that role because my parents had lavished Emma with attention. As more family members came forward with apologies and stories of similar favoritism, I experienced mixed emotions. Part of me felt relieved that the truth was finally emerging, that people were acknowledging the sacrifices I had made on my own. Yet another part of me was reminded of the years of hurt and rejection, of times when I felt invisible and wondered why my accomplishments had never seemed to matter as much. While it all suddenly made sense, it didn't erase the deep-seated feeling of being less important. The fallout has been draining. My parents continue to refuse any responsibility. They're so preoccupied with preserving the family's reputation that they fail to see the real damage they've done. They'd rather sweep this under the rug for peace than face the consequences, but I no longer feel guilty for standing up for myself. I now understand how crucial it is to set boundaries, even with family. If I give in now, it will only lead to more years of being taken for granted. For the first time, I feel in control of my own life. My grandparents have assured me they will deal with my parents if the situation escalates further. They made it clear they don't want me to feel pressured, even warning that if my parents continue to stir up trouble, they're ready to take additional legal steps to protect me. Just knowing that I don't have to face this alone has meant the world to me. Now I'm left wondering what family truly means. For years, I believed being a good son and brother required always putting others first, sacrificing my own needs so that everyone else remained alright. But now I see that there's a limit. Family should never make you feel like an ATM or disregard your own happiness just for convenience. As everything continues to unfold, I remain firm in my decision, though I sometimes question whether I should handle things differently or take further action. I really welcome any advice on how to move forward. There's still a lot for me to process, and I'm doing my best to take it one day at a time. Update 2. Just a few days after my grandparents' dramatic announcement about the will, my parents finally broke their silence. Instead of apologizing or admitting that they might have overstepped, they sent a long, carefully worded email defending every decision they'd made. They didn't only justify their favoritism toward Emma, they practically celebrated it, calling it an investment because, in their eyes, Emma had always been more family-oriented. In contrast, I was painted as independent and career-focused, implying that I didn't require as much support. They continued by claiming that my involvement in financing Emma's life wasn't really about money at all. It was their way of balancing the scales, ensuring that Emma had the same advantages they believed I had without needing extra help. To make matters worse, they even called me selfish for not wanting to share what they referred to as my excess wealth with the rest of the family. The email wasn't just empty words, it came with an attached list detailing every penny they claimed to have spent on me versus Emma. They covered everything, from basic childhood necessities like food, clothing, and shelter to Emma's wedding expenses, house payments, and even therapy sessions after her divorces. They included a line about Emma's emotional support during her teenage years, which was, frankly, beyond ridiculous. It became painfully clear that they had been meticulously tracking this for a long time, perhaps waiting for the day when they could hurl it all back at me. They even shared this email with the entire extended family, hoping to portray me as the selfish one. Instead, it backfired spectacularly. Neutral family members started reaching out, appalled by what they saw as an outrageous attempt to demand repayment for basic upbringing. Some even apologized for not having recognized the deep-seated favoritism I had endured for so long. I believe my parents expected everyone to side with them, but all they did was alienate even more people. To add insult to injury, my grandparents' lawyer got involved. My grandparents had always assumed that any money they'd given my parents over the years was split equally between Emma and me for education and necessary expenses. Now they were learning that funds had also been used for extravagant expenses like Emma's weddings and her various failed marriages. The lawyer sent an official letter demanding a full, transparent accounting of where the money had gone. My grandparents were even prepared to take this matter to court if needed. I didn't blame them. They felt betrayed, and I felt that way too. It was like a twisted web of lies that had been spinning for years without my realization. Shockingly, Emma's first ex-husband contacted me. He is the father of her two oldest kids. Although we were never really close, we always kept things civil. He told me he had heard about everything and wanted to share his version of the story. He explained that my parents had pushed him to marry Emma when she became pregnant, promising financial support if he went along with the marriage. I knew the wedding was quick, but I never imagined how deep my parents' involvement was. Apparently, most of the help they provided came from money my grandparents gave them, money my grandparents had believed would go towards Emma and my future. Even Emma apologized, saying he regretted not defying them and allowing things to escalate. My parents soon realized that their email was not having the intended effect. They tried to backtrack by sending a follow-up message to everyone, claiming the original email was written in anger and shouldn't be taken so seriously. It was hard to accept that excuse when it was obvious their email had been carefully planned, almost as if they had printed it out and mailed it like an official document. Attempting to retract it only made them seem worse, and no one was buying their story. Emma remained silent for a few days after our family meeting, but then she reached out again. Her tone shifted from guilt-tripping to something more desperate. She sent several emails telling me she had always loved me and had no idea our parents treated us so differently. She even tried to spin her situation again, claiming she never wanted to burden me, but that her tough circumstances with her kids left her with no other choice. Her messages became weirder, jumping from nostalgic childhood memories to reminders of how hard life was for her, with 6 kids and a husband struggling in his business. At one point, she even talked about her husband's financial troubles and mentioned that her kids were suffering in school due to the constant stress at home. It was hard not to feel some sympathy for Emma and her children, yet I could not overlook everything that had occurred. She knew about my parents' years-long favoritism and had exploited that privilege while I was left to handle my own struggles. Now that she was in trouble, she expected me to step in and save her. Her emails didn't infuriate me, instead, they saddened me. I wanted to believe Emma, my sister, and I knew her children were innocent in all of this. However, it was not my duty to fix a situation she had helped create. More family members began coming forward with their own stories. One of my aunts apologized for not speaking up earlier when she noticed the unfair treatment between Emma and me. She recalled times when my parents clearly sidestepped me and favored Emma, yet she chose not to intervene. She even reminded me that she once offered to help with my college applications, but my parents insisted I had everything under control. In truth, I was struggling on my own, balancing school applications and working. My aunt confessed that she had no idea how much I had been left to figure things out alone, and she felt terrible for not offering help sooner. Group chats with the family became intensely uncomfortable. Relatives reached out repeatedly asking if I needed anything or if they could help in any way. It felt strange to suddenly receive such offers from people who had never truly been there for me before. While I appreciated their kindness, it also overwhelmed me, as I felt I no longer needed their support. I had already conquered the worst parts of this ordeal on my own. I mostly just thanked them, unsure of what more to say. Even some of my parents' close friends began to distance themselves. A few had previously described me as a workaholic who didn't care about family, but after reading the email and learning more details, they started seeing through my parents' excuses. Some reached out to apologize, admitting they had been wrong to judge me. One of them even revealed that my parents had asked for a loan, claiming it was for family needs. They had assumed it was for basic expenses, but now they wondered if it might have actually funded Emma's lifestyle. Despite everything, my parents persisted. They continued to send messages insisting that I owed them for all they'd done for me, that it was my responsibility to keep the family united and that my refusal to help Emma was destroying the family. They accused me of ruining everything, damaging their reputation, and hurting Emma's children. It was frustrating to see them ignore their own faults and act as if none of this was on them. For now, I am holding my ground. I refuse to be guilt-tripped into fixing problems my parents created, nor will I take responsibility for Emma's choices. It is still hard to believe that this is my family, that things have come to a point where I must choose between my own well-being and the so-called loyalty of family. It's a lot to process, and honestly, I don't know what happens next. But for the first time, I feel that I am standing up for myself and finally being heard. That, at least, is a step in the right direction. Update 3. The situation has come to an unexpected end. No one in the family could have foreseen what unfolded next. After all the chaos and hidden issues came to light, my grandparents took a decisive stand. They organized one final family meeting, and this time, their lawyer was present. It felt surreal, like the closing scene of a long-drawn drama, as everyone gathered to face the truth and attempt to set things right. A chapter is closing with countless unresolved hurts and lingering feelings in the air. Yet this was never meant solely for conversation. My grandparents had already planned their next step, and they refused to waste any more time. They announced that not only had they updated their will, but they were also taking immediate action with their assets to prevent future misuse. For years, my parents had been living rent-free in a family vacation home. Initially meant to be temporary, they had grown comfortable and turned it into their permanent residence. They believed that one day, it would become officially theirs. However, that future is no longer certain. My grandparents are now selling the property, with intentions of using the proceeds to establish educational funds for all the great-grandchildren in the family. This initiative includes Emma's children and the offspring of my cousins, ensuring that money will be managed wisely from now on. To eliminate any chance of financial mismanagement, my grandparents also introduced a new scheme. They are creating annual scholarships for any family member who wishes to pursue a college degree or professional certification. An independent party, free from family influence, will oversee these funds. When my parents learned of this, their shock was evident. Losing their free home was hard enough, but the realization that they would no longer have access to grandparents' money was even more crushing. For the first time, they chose not to argue, or at least they recognized that it would be futile. Instead, they simply looked defeated, a rare scene after years of pride and control. With a deadline of 60 days to vacate the property and no option for an extension, the situation grew even more dire. The lawyer presented them with a signed document, leaving my parents no choice but to accept the terms. In a surprising turn, they also acknowledged some past financial miscalculations concerning the educational funds my grandparents had provided years earlier. This admission came as a major revelation that left many family members in shock. With no other options, my parents signed a formal agreement to repay the money. Although it will be a significant struggle for them, they must now downsize and move into a small apartment after leaving their longtime home. It is clear that this change represents a massive shift for them. They had enjoyed a life of comfort thanks to family support for so long that the thought of budgeting and cutting costs had never crossed their minds. Meanwhile, Emma seems to have accepted the new reality. With her support system crumbling, no more free handouts or guaranteed bailouts in case of her husband's business failures, Emma stood on her own. Rather than complain or try to induce guilt, she took action to improve her situation. She enrolled in a medical billing and coding program, which should provide her with a steady income and allow her to support her children independently. Additionally, her husband has increased his hours at his delivery job, signaling his commitment to contributing more to the family expenses. In a gestured request for a different kind of assistance, Emma emailed me not for money but for help with her resume. I agreed to review it, recognizing it as a small way to support her without fostering dependence on me. Perhaps the most heartwarming and unexpected part of all this has been the message from Emma's kids. They reached out to me through their father. Apparently, my grandparents had arranged for them to attend family therapy, as they had been struggling with confusing emotions and the weight of endless family drama. Now, with the guidance of a therapist, they are beginning to understand the complex family relationships and the long-standing favoritism they had endured. The older children even apologized for the guilt-tripping messages they sent when things first began to unravel. They admitted that they had not realized the pressure their mother was placing on me and felt remorseful for being unknowingly caught in the middle. I reassured them that none of this was their fault, they were just children following instructions. I remain hopeful that therapy will eventually help them see that it isn't their responsibility to mend the adult issues in their lives. Meanwhile, my parents are gradually coming to terms with their new reality, even as they struggle to fully accept it. In one last effort to rewrite their personal history, they began sending me random childhood photos. Each picture came with a caption like, "Remember when we were a happy family?" Or, "Don't forget who's been here from the start." I can't tell if their intent is genuine reconciliation or merely an attempt to tug at my heartstrings. Some of their messages boast about the immense sacrifices they made to raise me, while others cast them as suffering victims abandoned by those they loved. They even began telling anyone who would listen that the family had turned its back on them, framing the entire situation as if they were innocent victims desiring to help Emma. Most of the family, however, seem to see right through it now. They have chosen to keep their distance, and their interactions are now merely polite and reserved. As for me, this entire journey has been an eye-opening experience. I had no idea how deep-rooted the favoritism ran or how much I had been manipulated over the years. In all of this chaos, my grandparents emerged as unexpected pillars of strength and fairness. They took a stand to protect the next generation, ensuring that the hard lessons I and Emma learned would not be repeated. Though this journey has been painful and challenging, I am grateful for the clarity it has brought me. I now recognize who truly cares and who only saw me as a source of financial support. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a comment and subscribe for more updates. See you in the next tale.